Hey everyone, so we are live. Hope you guys are having a great weekend. It's Sunday now, and we're just gonna kind of go over really quick what's happening with the miners here really quick as far as institutions buying them, and then we'll take a look at as far as what the miners did against Bitcoin this past week. So it should be pretty quick. We've had a busy week, obviously, with Bitcoin miners, Bitcoin itself. It's been a fun week. We're up tremendously on a lot of these guys here compared to Bitcoin, so that was a great week for us. I think it might be just the beginning for us. But we'll see. We obviously had Cleanspark provide great numbers. Their stock took off. We had Hut 8 get a new CEO. That obviously didn't help their situation with the interviews that the guy did, Asher Ganut. So, leave those for the questions towards the end. We'll do that at the end of the show. But as always, you guys know the drill here. This is not financial advice for entertainment only. Please do your own research. I'm invested in the following coins and companies, as always, for full disclosure. And then if you guys enjoy this type of content, hit the like button, subscribe. Definitely helps out me and the channel, obviously, get to more viewers, so that's always great. Okay, so let's take a look at quickly here what's going on with Bitcoin here. And if we look at it right now, Bitcoin is still doing really well over the weekend, which is nice to see. It's not pumping that hard, which is something that I didn't want to see, especially with the CME futures. Typically, the gaps get filled, so I didn't want to have a huge gap over the weekend before Bitcoin starts going up higher. But we'll see how it does on tomorrow, on Monday. I mean, right now it's up 1% on the day so far. Yesterday was up 1.28%. So currently we're at 48,294, which is really good. We're getting close to that possible resistance line at 49,000. If it breaks through that, I think the next line of resistance is probably going to be around 50,000. Okay, so that's basically it for this side of things. And like I said, the miners, as you can see here on the chart, Friday had a really good day for the most part. There were a couple that were just down a little bit here, but I think only one was down. But we won't get into that. Let's get into the institution side of things, see if they are buying or selling in the last 6 months and 1 month. So I pulled in a lot of data here for these. I've been tracking it for a while now. So we're going to track over basically 6 months out, right? Where were the institutions at that point? How much did they buy into the miners? How much did they sell out of the miners? And we'll do the same thing over the month-over-month period as well. So we can kind of see what's going on here, at least long-term and short-term. Let's see if there's anything that we need to be kind of aware of and maybe have an eye on those things, okay? So what we do track here is obviously the number of shares that have been accumulated or decreased for the miners, the institutions, number of institutions as well, the percentage that's owned by the institutions as well, and how that's changed. And then we're also looking at like the strong buy ratings, hold ratings, underperform, sell ratings as well. We're not going to get really into the high or average price targets. We can, if you guys want to, towards the end of the video, if you guys have a question on it as far as what those have done. But I just want to keep it kind of general, just look at mainly on the institution side of things, if they've been buying into them or not. And then I think we'll go through that way, okay? So if we look at the charts down here, we can see that institution ownership changed over the 6 months, and the 1 month is over here. We can see that institutions, for the most part, have been buying quite heavily into some miners here over the last 6 months. We can see here BitDigital, right, 9.76%, a huge increase from where they were before. But also depends on how many shares were bought at that time or how many shares were owned by institutions at that time as well. But that's definitely an increase there. We'll also take a look at the actual number of shares there on the second charts here. But you can see here that BitDeer, so far percentage-wise, is the number one here, followed by TeraWolf. And BitDigital, I think, is the reason that institutions are buying into them, I think, is because of the AI play, right? When they first said that they have a customer that's going to be paying them $35 million a year, that has since increased to, I believe, $50 million. I think institutions are looking at that as a positive cash flow for them that's going to be easily to obtain. So I think that's what's helping that position out there. It's not that they're growing tremendously with their own hash rate, which they are growing a little bit, which is nice to see. But it's not like we're seeing from the growth of Marathon, Riot, Cleanspark, Bitfarms, IREN Energy, and others, right? So I don't think that's the main thing that's trending there. Okay. If you look at it over to the month-over-month, you can see that that's only up 0.91% here. So it's still pretty good compared to some of the other miners that are actually selling here. We got BitDeer up 4.9 from 6 months ago. Bitfarms 7.21. You can see here that Cypher's 1%. Cleanspark's like 1% as well. You got a lot of them at 1% here. Hut, interesting enough, is down 7.37% as far as institution ownership over the 6 months period. And it's also down here on the month-over-month as well, but not as badly. Okay. We got institutions selling out of IREN Energy or not buying into them over the last 6 months, it looks like. But if you look at the month-over-month, they had a nice increase here. So it looks like institutions are maybe finally starting to realize that IREN Energy is way undervalued from where they should be, right? We'll see if that continues going forward. Marathon, they sold in the last 6 months. Now they're getting back into it here this month. Who else do we have here? TeraWolf has continued to have pretty nice run here, 7.12% over the 6 months, and then up again another 1% here. So definitely doing really well there. Ones that they have been selling out of is Sphere 3D, Mawson here recently in the last month, Hut as well, Digihost, CORZ just slightly. And you got Bitfarms here, which is surprisingly because they are planning to grow. So I'm surprised that institutions have, or some institutions have sold out of Bitfarms. And then obviously Cleanspark here, we were down 1.99% on that one. So I'm not sure how that equates. Either they're taking profits there or something, possibly with Cleanspark, because Cleanspark had a great quarter here. So I think that we might see a change in that going forward in the next month, but we'll see. Okay. If we look at the shares out, that were bought in the last 6 months or sold, we can see pretty much everybody here was being accumulated by institutions, except for Sphere 3D. That one was down only 7.2 thousand shares. Not a huge loss there, but still, they're one of the smaller ones, right? They're the ones that we kind of think might be on the chopping block when the heavy event comes. So that might be partially there. They're looking forward to that as well. Most accumulated here was Bitfarms, 32 million shares here in the last 6 months, right? So that kind of doesn't bode well, or that bodes very well for Bitfarms. And then also if you see here that we have also an increase in 890,000 shares in the last month. So it looks like we had more, or a couple institutions get out of the position, and we had possibly other institutions buy more into it, right? So you have to look into both things here. What else do we have here? We got ones that were significant here was obviously Bitfarms from 6 months ago, huge increase again from a month ago. We had also Cypher here, up a little bit here, 3.5 million shares added in the last 6 months, and then 1.7 million in the last month or so. So that's still a nice increase there. Cleanspark was 18 million shares accumulated by institutions over the last 6 months. Another 690,000 added in the last month, so that's good there. Hive had 2.6 million, looks like. And then they had also 730,000, so that's good there. We had HUT again here being a decrease in the number of shares owned by institutions a month ago. And they had also a very small number of 486,000 over the last 6 months, right? If you go from that point to now. Marathon, huge increase as well, 15.9 million shares over the last 6 months, another 1.9 million, excuse me, in the last month, so that's good there. Mawson, right? Small accumulation there, but then we had a decrease here again month over month. So it looks like institutions are looking to at Mawson, excuse me, possibly being one of those ones that might be on the chopping block as well. And it's kind of the ones that I'm thinking might have issues going forward after the halving event as well. Then you got Riot up 8.5 from 6 months ago, another 1.7 here from last month as well. And then you got TerraWolf, 19.4 million, another 2.39 million. So they're like the best ones here that were accumulated in the last basically month here. So that's interesting to note, right? They do have the debt, so maybe they're working on a way to figure out how to pay off the debt that they do have, or at least pay it down and then refinance it as well. So I think maybe institutions are looking at that and seeing that could be a positive catalyst going forward for them. And I would agree if they can do that, I think that would be positive, because right now I think that is dragging the stock down more than it really should be, at least at this point. Okay, so that's kind of how that all looks right there. And then we got the percentage of institutions here and the stock performance over the last 6 months, and then the last month here as well. So you guys can kind of take a look at that. We're not going to go too deep on it. Big thing obviously was Core Scientific was up huge. Institutions only added 1.16% of it over the last 6 months. Over the last month, they actually got out of their positions, or at least a couple institutions got out. And then we had obviously 171% increase in the month or so, it looks like, based on the data that I'm having here. Who else was up here? Mawson. Look, Mawson was up 446% over the last 6 months. Only 1.4% institutions increased. And then we had a decrease here, and they're only up 5% in the last month, right? HUT 8 is also pretty interesting here as well. It's down 85% from 6 months ago in price, and it's down another 83% from last month. So institutions were selling out of that one, and same here. So that kind of coincides with those two things. What else did we have here that was kind of interesting? We talked about Mawson here. Let's see, TerraWolf up 15%, 7.2, 29. So that's kind of average on the side of things. Cleanspark up 205% from 6 months ago. They're up 71% from 1 month ago. And then you can kind of see how things have stacked up as far as, I was trying to see if maybe institutions flowing in would have an impact on the stock price more so, but I'm not seeing it here. Sometimes we do see it, sometimes we don't see it, but right now I just don't see it based on the percentage that's being added into it. Maybe what I should do is, instead of doing percentage of institutions, I should look at number of shares added. That might maybe give us a little bit better picture of it, because I think institutions could get out of it, but other institutions could be buying into it, and that might be better going forward. So I may do that. Thinking off the top of my head here while I'm looking at this, I'm like, maybe there is something to it. Maybe I should use the shares instead of the actual percentage of institutions here. So that's kind of how the way things look. I would expect institutions to continue to buy in, obviously, to the big ones here, like we've seen with Bitfarms, Cleanspark, Marathon, maybe TerraWolf, would expect also for them to start buying in a little bit more into Iris Energy, I think. Iris Energy is going to be reporting their financial results for the second half or the first half of, I can't remember which the calendar year. I think this might be their first half of the 2024 calendar year. In the next week or the week following, I can't remember exactly, but they're going to be reporting that. So we will have some more accumulation happening there. Who else do I think is going to be? Well, we got other miners obviously reporting as well. We'll get those information for those. And yeah, but that's it. But that's kind of how things look right now. So it looks like, I would say, ones to be mindful of is Mawson, Sphere 3D, Hut 8. I think Hut 8 is going to be fine going into the halving event. They have a diversified revenue stream, so there shouldn't be a concern there. It's just how well the stack will perform. That's the issue there. And then obviously we know about the growth of their self-mining has been in question right now. We'll see if we get any updates on that as well. And then Cypher obviously is one that's going to do fine. Bitfarms, BitDeer, BitDigital, Argo, I think is going to be also on the chopping block as well, possibly on that one. So those are the ones that kind of keep an eye on, at least, or not financial advice, but those might be the ones that might not exist after the halving event. So, okay. That is it on that. Let's take a look at the weekly performance here on the miners. The first chart that we look at is how far the miners are from their 52-week lows. So the 52-week lows could have been within the last 3 months, 4 months, 2 months, 1 month, whatever it might be. So we're just looking at that. What was their 52-week low at that point, and then how far are they up from that 52-week low? That's on the first top chart here. The bottom chart is how far away they are from their 52-week highs. So some of these miners reached their 52-week highs here around December, I want to say, early January. So that's maybe where most of these are away from that point, right? So looking at this, we can see here, Cleanspark, obviously the top performer here. Core would have been the top performer, but they changed over to a different stock symbol, right? Because they got out of bankruptcy, so now they're CORZ. Before they were CORZW or CORZQ, I think. So that obviously changed, so I don't have the data for that one. But they were the most up last year in the last 52 weeks if you compared it. Right now, on the new stock symbol, they're only up 43%. But you got Cleanspark here up huge. Mawson up 534%. Mawson doesn't have a lot of shares out. So I think that one is being kind of manipulated because it's easy to do so. Right, their operations aren't that great. Balance sheet isn't all that great. So I think that one's being just manipulated by investors because it's easy to do so. And you can pump the price up quite nicely and get a nice percentage gain on it. Okay. So because there's really nothing happening with Mawson as far as the reason they should get 534% increase from their 52-week lows. Okay, Marathon up 365%, Sphere 322%, another one like Mawson. It's like I'm seeing like GameStop all over with some of these guys here. Really no reason for them to be up as much as they are. You got TeraWulf. TeraWulf, I would agree. You know, they have good operations. The only thing is the debt that's holding them back. But based on this, they're doing actually pretty good here, so that's fine. Bitfarms up 300% as well. They're doing fine. Iris 230%, BitDigital 213%, BitDeer 184%, Riot 182%, DMG 175%, Argo 170%. Argo, again, one of those ones that should be probably towards this end of the line here. Cypher up 165%, Digihost 157%, Bitcoin up 140% from its 52-week lows here. So all of these miners have done a heck of a lot better. You can see that most of these guys have done at least, you can see a 2x, you can see a 3x, 4x possibly on some of these guys as well. That's kind of what we want to see with miners is a leverage play on Bitcoin. And you got Hive only down up 64% here. Core 43%, but like I've said, they're up much more than that. And you got Hut 39% up over the last 52 weeks, right? These two guys are the worst performers. Coincidentally, they're both Canadian miners. They were both also in Ethereum mining a while back. That changed over to proof of stake. That hurt their business, and ever since then, it seems like they just can't get out of that slump a little bit here. So Hive obviously is very efficient in what they do and the way they mine and everything else. They're always like in the top 3 miners for efficiency. The only thing I think there is just growth, really, for them. But yeah, that is it for those. And then you can see how far the miners are away from their 52-week highs here. The furthest one away is Hut, again, 62%, almost 63% away from that. Then you get a lot of them that are in the 40s, 30s, 20s. And the closest ones are obviously Cleanspark. Cleanspark, I think, reached their new 52-week high on Friday. And then Bitcoin only 3.7%, right? Bitcoin's peak was 49,000. We're at 48,000 something. So we're very close to that peak again. And then that will obviously reset again when we do see it happening here. Okay. But here we look at the weekly performance, the 1, 4, and 8, and 12 weeks performance here. So last week, the miners did a fantastic job compared to Bitcoin, except for a couple, or actually for one. But Cleanspark, obviously, coming out with the reports of positive EPS, that had a huge impact on the stock. That went up 68% in the last week. That way outperformed Bitcoin on that week. Iris Energy also up 57%, which is kind of nice to see, right? Because I've been kind of yelling that they're way undervalued for where they should be compared to their peers. So it's nice to excuse me. It's nice to see them get up to a little bit closer. I think they're still way undervalued, but it's a little bit closer to where they should be. So that was good to see. Marathon up 31%, Riot up 30%, Argo 29, CORZ 26, Cypher 25, TerraWolf 24, Sphere 24, Digihost 22, along with DMG. Then we got Bitfarms up 21%, BitDigital 19, along with Mawson, Hot 8 up 16, Hive up 16 as well. Bitcoin was only up 9% last week, and I track it from Friday to Friday. That's kind of the way the miners trade, so that's kind of the way I look at it. And then BitDeer was underperforming Bitcoin here in the last week. It's down, well, not down, that's only up 3%. But seeing this, you can see again the leverage play that Bitcoin miners have on Bitcoin. So 9% here. You almost got a 2x here for these guys here, a little bit more than that, and then you're getting more to like a 3x here, and then you got obviously like a 4, 5, 6x here on some of these miners over here. All right, so that's kind of what we want to see when we're looking at miners. But the opposite is also true. Bitcoin is going down. The miners do the same thing where it's in reverse. Okay, so overall, fantastic week for the miners, which is nice, and we want to see that going forward. And then when we look at the table here, as far as how the miners have performed week and over week, we can see here that we're starting to get more green weeks here. Again, we had a red week last week, or well, this past week we had a green week. The week prior to that, we had a kind of a red week, and the week prior to that, we had a green week. And then we had basically 3 to 4 weeks where we were in the red, right? Ever since the beginning, well, middle of January, it looks like January 19th. The week of that, we were pretty much down on those from basically December 29th. So a couple of weeks where we were just down on the miners for the most part. But prior to that, we had a nice rally here. We had more green, right? So we're kind of getting these kind of phases where we pump up, we slow down a little bit, we retrace a little bit back, and we go back up. That's fine. That's healthy, I think, with the markets. You can't have everything going up all at once, for a long extended time. You need a little bit of pullback, a little bit of refresh, and then we go back up higher from there. But that's the data that we have here on everything going back to basically May of last year. You can see how that all kind of shapes out as we go into it. I mean, the beginning of the year in 2023 was a fantastic year for the miners and Bitcoin itself. And we had a little bit of a reprieve in action here ever since the middle of July. You can see we started getting more red in here. And then after that, we started getting a lot more green in here where miners were pumping, everything was pumping because the spot Bitcoin ETF was getting close to being approved. And that was obviously a fantastic ride where the miners actually did really well. If we look back at the previous halving cycle before the halving cycle, we had Bitcoin going up just slightly, going up 20%. Yes, we did have the pandemic in there as well. We had other things that were happening in there as well. It kind of drove the price of BTC down, but it rebounded quickly after that. But the miners continued to go down in percentage-wise. So we're not seeing that this time around, which is surprising, and I think that might be the contribution of spot Bitcoin ETFs in there as well. And you can obviously see the performance that they've had over the last 52 weeks. That's just stellar compared to what we had the prior halving cycle before the halving cycle. Okay? So that is it on it all. Hopefully this continues going forward where we have great weeks again where the miners are up huge. Oh, and I forgot to go into the other weeks here. So here's on the 4-week chart. You can see how things have played out. You had Cleanspark still beating everybody here on that time frame. TerraWolf is up 59%, so that would be number 2 here as far as performance. And then we got Marathon up 48. You got Digihost up 50% on that. 8 weeks, if we look at it, we have a little bit more miners that are in the downside of things. Biggest one was Hot 8, down 43% from then. Biggest gainer is Mawson, again, for no real reason there. Cleanspark is up 17%, Digihost up 17% as well. And then on the 12 weeks, you can see here that Mawson has kind of crushed everybody here in the last 12 weeks. They're up 396%, again, for no real reason there for it to be that up other than being manipulated, I think. Okay, yeah, the Sphere 3D also up 202%, right? Not a lot of shares, easy to manipulate. And then you got Bitfarms up 154%, Cleanspark 150%, Marathon up 109, Argo 111 as well. And then everybody else was below the 100 mark here, it looks like. So that's how it all shaped out. All right, okay. Let's get into the Q&As and see what you guys have to say, and we'll call it a day. Let's see here. I want to do that, Q&A. Let me go over to my screen here. All right, so let's see what kind of questions we get. So if you could, type in a big question in capital letters for me. That way I can see it in the comments when you guys do provide those. And we'll see what we get here. Okay. Let's see. So Gary Pallett's he's just a statement here. Congratulations to those who loaded miners in the bear market. Yeah, I mean, that was a great time to do it. if you can do it. As you guys know, I don't trade them. I pretty much just buy and hold them and dollar cost average into them on that one, and it definitely has paid out. I'm up close to 300% on Cleanspark, over 180% on Bitfarms right now, and I'm still holding. I'm going to be possibly buying some more onto that. Do I track short interest? Yes, I'm updating that. I'm going to be using the float instead of all the shares outstanding on that, so that will be coming up later on this month. So once I have that data, I'll get you guys updated on that as well. So that is coming up here. Let's see if we have any other questions. See something popping in. Kay is asking a question, hasn't popped up to my feed here. There it is. Okay. So here's a question from Kay. If you just started fresh today with no miners, where would you allocate your money with 3 or 4 miners? I would get into like the top 5 miners, which I've been saying is Bitfarms, Cleanspark. These are just in alphabetical order. Bitfarms, Cleanspark, Iris Energy, Marathon, Riot, and you can also include in there in Cypher potentially as well, along with Terrawolf. I think those are like the top ones there to really get into possibly. How you allocate that, that's up to you as far as what percentage you want to go into it. Hard to say how the miners are going to perform going forward. The thing I'm looking most for in miners is obviously efficiencies, good balance sheet, and then growth. I want to see growth going into the halving event and after the halving event because that's going to be huge for them to continue to gain more revenue. Question, why is Bitfarms lagging other miners? Don't really know. Sometimes they lag. Sometimes other miners lag. Sometimes Cleanspark has lagged for a long time also, the other miners, right? Until they reported that they were basically fully funded to get to 16 exahash. And then the stock just took off like a rocket. So it could be a number of things. It just could be people trading out of one stock, getting into another stock and doing that. But there's really no reason why it shouldn't do well going forward. I have a lot of shares in Bitfarms as well. Let's see here. Any thoughts on when Bitcoin peak will be? Mid-2025, I assume. That's kind of what everybody's thinking, yeah. We're thinking usually it's about 12 to 18 months after the halving event with the spot Bitcoin ETF. Could that be prolonged? It could be. We just don't know. We'll have to keep an eye on it. We'll see how things look on different charts. We'll look at all those things as we get through it. So there's going to be a lot to look at that time. Let's see here. Jeffrey has a question. If BTC goes up 2x, would you expect on average miners to go up 4 to 6x? Yeah, I would say at least, probably at least 3x from that. If Bitcoin goes up 2x, you're looking at 3 to, yeah, I would say maybe even 4 to 6x possibly. You could even get more on that, right? If they're growing really well, they're being profitable, they're doing all the right things, they could go up even more. Last time around, we saw Marathon go up 7,000% from the bottom, basically where it reached before the halving event and in the halving event. And then basically a year out, it peaked at almost like a 7,000%. So it was just crazy. You had Riot up like 4,000%. So things can definitely get more frothy with the FOMO coming in, and things can definitely go up much higher. But we'll see if we get that this time around. Let's see here. Pretty much the same question as Bitfarms before. Bitfarm price, why do you think it's slow to increase? They also have a lot of shares out, right? So that is going to have an impact a little bit on the share price. I think they're still way undervalued from where they should be. What we really want to see is their growth here in the next couple months, especially before the halving event. If they can get close to like the 10 exahash or something like that, that would be fabulous. I think that would be a catalyst that would propel the stock up forward. And then you're also going to have, obviously, the new FASB rules that Cleanspark was able to use on the miners when they report their Q1. I don't think they're going to be able to report it on their Q4 because they have to report it on the new fiscal year numbers. So they can start with the new fiscal year numbers, but they can't do it for the old one, I believe. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's kind of my understanding of the way the rules have been set up. Okay, so they will have, obviously, anybody that hodls Bitcoin is going to have that FASB rule added to them, which is going to be a huge bonus for them. Let's see here. What do I think of Digital? Is it a buy? Yeah, that's a tough one. I mean, they have a great balance sheet. I'll give you that. They have the new AI stuff is interesting. It's a lot of money that's being added into it. So I think they're going to be more stable with the revenue than possibly other miners with that for at least the next couple of years. But I just don't know how that is all going to translate into being a proxy for Bitcoin or a leverage play on Bitcoin. Okay, so that's kind of the question I have. I don't know if it's a buy. I mean, that's up to you guys to decide if it's a buy or not. I just provide you guys with all the data, and then you guys can do what you want. Let me see here. Question: Cleanspark 20 exahash by halving? Ooh, that's gonna be tough. I think they're at like 12 something, 13 now exahash right now, or in the month of February they're supposed to be there. They're still waiting on I think they have a problem with one of their transformers or something like that that's getting tested. That's supposed to be switched out. So that's going to be below the 16 that they wanted to get to. So I don't think they're going to get to 20 by the end. They're going to get close, but I don't think they are going to do it. If they do it, that'd be fantastic. I think the goal is for them to get to 20 exahash by the end of the first half. Let's see here. What is the ideal location for Bitcoin mines and why? Well, ideally you want to be like in areas that don't have to curtail a lot, right? So we've seen that with some miners like Cleanspark there in Georgia, where they use nuclear power. They don't really have to curtail. At least we haven't seen much curtailment from them. They curtail maybe at most like a day during like peak summer months where it's hot as heck. And then we see a little bit in the winter times, but that's not much. So ideally you want to have places that are abundant with energy that you don't have to curtail. In Texas, we see that they have to curtail quite a bit. One reason for that is I think they have also a lot of solar and wind and everything else. So there's times when you can use the electricity, times when you can't use the electricity. So that also plays into it as well. But obviously places that you can run as much as you can uptime for that, I think is the best places to be. Bitfarms also has, and Hive, they're up in Canada. They have the hydro in there that I think they can run pretty much, but sometimes they curtail because of how cold it gets up in Canada. So there's pluses and minuses to everything. Okay, let's see. Question, what would be Bitfarms price target for end of 2024? I would say above $10, actually. If they can get to where they're supposed to get to and get to 17 exahash potentially, possibly even to 20, I think they've stated they want to get to. I think $10 is a minimum for that, if they can get to it. Depending where Bitcoin price goes, network hash rate, all that stuff. Okay, well, this is a loaded question here. What do you think of the new CEO of Hut 8? I'm currently not impressed. Right, they did that video with Bryce McNally. I watched it, and for some reason they had them take it down. I guess they didn't like the way the CEO came out. I didn't like the fact that they're basically, the way I understood it is, they're looking to use their capital in a strategic way that's going to bring the shareholders the most return on it, right? And that might be in the data centers that they do, the managed hosting, things like that. You have less capital needed for that, and you can have basically a steady income stream from that going forward. But if you look at Bitcoin, right now we're getting into a bull run. If you get upgraded miners, he didn't say anything about upgraded miners. He said only about possibly not down throttling, basically. So if they're operating at 80 terahash, 90 terahash, whatever those machines are, they can possibly dial those down to maybe about 75 or something like that, get them down for the joules per terahash down to like 29, 28 joules per terahash, and run them basically until they're dead. Those machines are dead before they even possibly will replace those. So for that reason, I just don't know. I think it's a little short-sighted maybe, but that's just me. Okay, great question here. Do you think CORZ is the most undervalued or Iris Energy? CORZ, I need to see some more data on them as far as their financials are concerned. So at least a quarter or two before I can make that determination. Right now, based on the healthy balance sheet that Iris has, I would say that Iris is more undervalued. But based on where CORZ should be, if they're doing really well, they should be much higher also. So they would be more undervalued at that point. But I just need to see more data on them. The data that we do have is before they were in bankruptcy, now they're out of bankruptcy. I want to see more data on that, how that is all going to be pushed out, how the debt is being pushed out. I want to see all those things. And then how they're paying down the debt as well to really figure that out. Let's see here. So is it better than to buy the miners or Bitcoin? I'm loaded into miners. I have both. I got Bitcoin and I got miners as well. I think with the miners historically being a leverage play on Bitcoin, we're seeing it here right now on the charts that we looked at. I think miners are a short-term play where possibly Bitcoin could be a longer-term play if you hodl it for the next couple 5-10 years, whatever it might be much higher in price, or you can trade it, right? It goes up to a new high of 200,000 or something like that. You can sell it at that point if that's the peak. If it goes back down to 47,000 mark or something like that, buy it up again, and you can do it that way. Miners are kind of the same thing. It's buy them in the bear markets, sell them in the bull markets, and then possibly repeat the process, rinse and repeat if you can. I don't have the time to trade, so I just buy and hold and dollar cost average in as much as I can. Let's see. Okay, so here's a question here. If BTC is 100,000 Mara, what's the alpha? Thanks. Well, if BTC gets to 100,000, that'd be basically a 2x from here. I would expect Mara to be at least 3x from there, if not 4x from where they are right now. So that's kind of where you're kind of looking at. It could be much higher too. It just all depends. Let's see. Any thoughts on terrible cash flow? Okay, so they installed more miners here recently, which is good, which is going to help them out when the halving does come in, because without those, we were looking like they were going to be negative cash flow possibly at that point. Because right, your revenue is going to get cut in half at that point, so that was going to obviously hit them, and obviously they have the debt interest payments that they need to make on those as well, on top of operations, everything else. So you need more miners in place to replace the decrease in revenue, basically. So that's helping them out. And then if they can stay as lean as they can, pay down the debt to the 40 million that's due by April 1st, they will be in a much better position. That will decrease the interest that they need to pay on it, but they still need to pay off the rest of that loan by the end of this year. So they're going to have to restructure it, dilute, or something, a combination of both to get that going. Let's see, what else do we have here? Okay, how do you know institutions sell miners? Show the proofs. So basically, I'm just looking at the way you'll do that is look at institutions on, like, I use Webull for that. That shows us how many institutions have bought in, how many institutions there are each month, and I track it each month. So if I look back at this chart here, let me pull this up for you guys. And then that way, here's the proofs on it that we have. So let's take a look at the screen here. Okay, here, I'm tracking everything, institutions, and I track this for all the miners as far as what the miners are. So for like Argo, if we look at it here, institutions, we go back to here and we see here over the last 6 months, we had 22 institutions, how many shares they had, percentage of that, buy ratings, price targets. I track it all. So that's kind of how I'm figuring this stuff out. So there's your proof right there. Okay, let's go back to the questions here. All right. Next question. Question. Who is your favorite CEO of the miners you track and why? Oh, that's a tough question. I don't know. I mean, I like the guys from Bitfarms. I like the guys from Cleanspark, obviously. They've been pretty forthcoming as far as what their plans are and their execution, right? So looking at that, Cleanspark has had really great execution except for the last couple of months here, which we knew about because the power company wasn't going to be providing the connection until possibly February. So we knew that in advance. But otherwise, they've always pretty much met their targets and things like that they're going to get to or exceeded them. So I've enjoyed that part of the transparency and being able to see what's going on there and then just being open to the community on that. Bitfarms, kind of the same thing, right? They've been pretty open as far as what their plans were to pay down debt. Then they're going to be growing. So they're doing all of the right things there. TerraWolf is also really good there on those things. Obviously, they're dealing with the debt, so they have to do with that. Who else do we have with that? Possibly Iris Energy as well, right? Those guys are, I wish they were more transparent though. I wish we would get the quarterly results. But other than that, they have pretty good information out there for the investors. And then who else? Hive. Hive sometimes is a little wishy-washy a little bit with some of the data that they provide. But, I mean, they're still growing. They've been through this process. So, and then, Hut 8 has kind of fumbled a little bit here in the last year or so. But those are kind of the ones that I would like. Marathon also is kind of wishy-washy with their data sometimes and the information they provide. So it's a little tough, right? We had, Fred from Marathon from like 2022 to 2020, well, in 2022 saying miners are going to get plugged in, miners are going to get plugged in, miners are going to get plugged in at this date. They was just kind of pushing down the can down the road where they didn't execute that well, getting to 23 exahash, which they were supposed to get to 23 exahash by the end of 2022. They didn't do that until pretty much the end of 2023. So they're a year behind there. So that's kind of my take on it. Let's see, what else do we have here? We already covered this question here. What factors make for the most ideal place for building a Bitcoin mining farm? Electricity, cost of electricity, abundance of electricity. Those are things you're really looking at on that side of things. Also, governmental factors, regulations, things like that, right? You don't want to go into a country like Russia where whatever you build is going to be taken over by the government or something like that, or other places like that. So those are all things you want to take a look at. Let's see here. Okay, I'm trying to find another question here. Okay, Hank asks, what is your pullback price to add Cleanspark? Oh boy, if it gets down to like 11, I think we might have a pullback a little bit. If it gets down to like 11 and I have the cash to do it, I will buy back in a little bit more. But that's, yeah, my dollar cost average on Cleanspark is like $3.35. So I'm way down. If I have the cash, I'll do it, but I may buy into like some of the ones that I think are still more undervalued right now, which would be like Iris Energy and Bitfarms potentially. And that one. Let's see. What market cap do you think Cleanspark could reach by the end of the Bitcoin peak? I did a number on that. I think it was like right around, what was it, 12 or 14 billion potentially. But that was before we knew that they were going to get to 32 exahash. So with the 32 exahash potentially sometime later on this year or early next year, that's going to possibly push the number up higher. But we'll do some numbers on that when we do have some more information from all the miners for the quarterly results. We'll do some metrics on that. Let's see here. Trying to find another question. Okay, here we go. We got a question here. Okay, your thoughts? Do we see a dip on the miners after the halving starts in April, or it's all changed because of the Bitcoin ETF? Excuse me. Yeah, that's a good question. Historically, we would see a dip, right? At least the month or two after Bitcoin halving. This time around, we got the spot Bitcoin ETF. That's driving price up of Bitcoin. That could also drive the price up of Bitcoin miners as well. So it's tough to say. And that's why I said I just dollar cost average into the miners because I just don't know where things are going to go. I'm terrible at timing the markets. I've done it before. I would have had a heck of a lot more Bitcoin if I didn't try timing the markets for Bitcoin. So I just buy into it, dollar cost average into it, and I've learned my lesson on that. But that's just me. Let's see here. Do you like Mara? I like Mara in the fact of their size, but their operations are, they're wanky, right? So January, you had a great month. Operation was almost 100%. Then the next month, they're down. It's like they can't seem to maintain a consistent operational side of things from their, at least from my perspective. When you look at the monthly metrics that we look at and the data that we have on them, it's just all over the place. It's like, I don't know what's going on with that. I think the reason for that is obviously they're, at least in the past, majority of their machines were hosted. That was, I think, the reason for that. Hopefully, with them buying more of their own facilities, they'll have a little bit more control over it, and then we'll get that better metrics going forward for them. But they do have a lot of cash. They have a lot of hodl. They have, I mean, they're a fantastic company as far as that part. Just operation side of things, I wish they would be a little bit better. Let's see here. Question. Okay, here we go. What would be your Bitcoin price prediction for 2024-25? When I did this, when did I do this? Last year, I think I did this beginning of the year. I said, I think Bitcoin possibly can get to about 180,000 this time around. With the spot Bitcoin ETF, I think it could go up higher than that. But it all depends on how much inflows we get from, mom and pop stands, retirement plans, pensions, all that stuff from around the world, how much money goes flowing into it. That could extend things out much longer. So we could be up to maybe 200, 250,000, who knows, right? But I'm saying 180. I said the bottom was going to be, at the beginning of last year, I said the bottom for Bitcoin was going to be 13,500. We got down to 15,000. So I was pretty close on that. And I was pretty happy with that. Now it's just where Bitcoin will go here. We'll have to see. Let's see if we have any questions. Okay. Any views on Marathon recent issues at Applied causing minor shutdowns in January? So, I mean, obviously it's unfortunate, right? From what I've read, what I've heard, it's basically Applied has a transformer that's down or malfunctioning or something like that. They need it to be repaired or replaced. So if they can do that relatively quickly, that would be nice. Obviously, these transformers are pretty large, and it might take a while for those to come in, to get a new one in. So it's unfortunate, right? But you would think that having such huge operations, it would have at least like one transformer on site. I know they're expensive, but man, if you're making, from that one site possibly, what is that going to be? Maybe around $10 million a month or something like that. You would think that they would have the backup plan in place just in case something does go wrong. Let's see here. How do I feel, or how do you think about WGMI? WGMI is an ETF for the Bitcoin miners. Better than buying individual miner in stocks. I think if you don't know which ones to get into, I think that's an easy way to do it. I have it in my 401k profit sharing plan, and that's a great way to do it because unfortunately I can't buy individual stocks. But this way you get a basket of the miners. I think they also have like NVIDIA in there as well. They have some other stocks in there that's kind of miner-centric basically. I think it's a good one. And it's done really well for me also this past year. Okay, we'll do a couple more questions and we'll call it a day here. What else do I have here? Okay. Question, do you expect Mara Riot to use the new FASB rules to their advantage? What are the pros and cons of using the new rules? Okay, so interesting question on that one. I think they will use it, but they won't be able to use it until the first quarter of 2024. They report on that one. they can't, I believe, this is my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong here, but I believe the FASB set it up so you can start using that rule in your fiscal year 2024 figure. So you can't use it for 2023, I believe. So they'll take advantage of it when they report on Q1, which we won't get the information on until, was it going to be probably around April, I'm guessing, right? Because you got January, February, March, April, and then so maybe in May we might see those FASB rules going into effect for those miners. The good thing is obviously they can revalue their Bitcoin that they do have instead of having to value their Bitcoin at the lowest price that previously, right? So now they can revalue that Bitcoin to the upside, which helped obviously Cleanspark, and it will help the other miners as well. Marathon has a huge HODL position. That should give them a huge boost. Hut 8 has a nice position as well on HODL, so that's good. The other thing is that that's great as Bitcoin's going up, right? But as Bitcoin's going down, right, you really don't want to have, at least in my opinion, I don't think you want to have a huge position in Bitcoin at that point because you're going to be taking a huge loss on it at that point on the accounting side of things. So maybe the thought was, and I posed this question to Twitter Spaces on Friday to the group there, do they think that with the new FASB rule, is it more likely that the miners will sell their Bitcoin that they do have towards the bull runs so that way they don't have to report the losses on that in the bear markets? We do have another bear market. And a lot of people agreed with me there that that's what might be happening here. So we'll see if the HODL position is going to continue being the main focus here for a lot of these miners, right? Where they've been accumulating and diluting shareholders just to HODL as much as they can. And then is that going to change going forward where they're going to actually start selling it, use the cash that they sell from to then build out in the bear markets again, which is the ideal way to do it, I think. Okay, let's see. Let's see. Well, you already covered Bitfarms why it's lagging. It's just lagging right now. It's just sometimes other miners lag different times. It's not a big deal. Okay, how do I feel about Wolf besides their debt, like other operators, mining fleet, etc.? Great operations, great fleet, great operations on side of things. So I like them there. The only thing, like I said, is just the debt. I think the debt is keeping them down. So if they can get rid of that damn debt, I think they'll be in much better position there. Let's see what else here. Not sure. Okay. Do you think that Mara delinking from Hut 8 had something to do with January shortfall? No, because it's a different facility, right? It's the Applied Digital facilities, I think, that was in question as far as the shortfall in revenue or mining for Marathon. I think the reason that Marathon is delinking from it is because they're trying to save money as much as they can, and they're obviously paying, but they were paying Hut 8 to provide managed services there. Why pay for it when you can do it yourself? You can have definitely better uptime doing it as well. So I think that's why. Okay. This is going to be a hot topic here. Chiefs or 49ers? I'm going with the Chiefs, guys. I don't know what you guys feel. I like to see Mahomes and everybody else get another double, basically. That'd be kind of cool, I think. That's the only reason why. I have no love for Chiefs or the 49ers. I'm a Bears fan, but that's just me. One of these days, the Bears will win a Super Bowl. I don't know when it's going to be, but maybe in my lifetime. Let's see it. Question, are you not worried about Iris Energy to have no HODL to go through the halving? Yeah, that's one of the things that I've always said is that's also something that might be keeping them down as well, and then not providing the quarterly results. So those two things in conjunction, I think, are keeping the stock down more than anything else. But the way that they view it, the Roberts brothers there, is they view themselves as a Bitcoin or like a gold miner, right? They sell every time. And I think it's short-sighted on their part there because we know that Bitcoin has these rallies and bull markets and bear markets, and it's advantageous for them to HODL, and especially as you get closer to the halving event, I think it's advantageous for the companies to HODL more, right? They don't see it that way. I think they're using it to grow, which is okay. But I'd like to definitely see a little bit of different strategy there. So that could be why it's holding it down. That's why it's possibly so undervalued right now. Okay. All right, guys, I think that is it. We've covered quite a bit here, and we've been going for quite a long time. So again, thank you so much for coming in. As always, spreadsheets are available to Patreon members. There's still some spots open in like the $4 tier, $5 tier. And if those are closed, you still have open spots in the $8 tier. You get all the spreadsheets that I do here. And you also have the Discord community there as well that you get access to, which is great. You have a lot of great people on there doing a lot of communications and stuff. And we'll see how things go forward. So I appreciate you guys coming in. Hit the like button, subscribe. Helps me out tremendously. Have fun during the Super Bowl. I'm going to be watching later on. So maybe I'll comment on it in tomorrow's video or something like that. We'll talk about it one way or another. Maybe on the chats or something like that. But again, thank you again. Greatly appreciate you guys coming in. Hope you guys have a wonderful Sunday. I'll see you guys tomorrow. Until then.